Well, friends, good afternoon. The first thing that I'm going to do is make sure that my phone is silenced. I might suggest that you do the same with yours. I think there's a pretty good chance that at some point during the next half hour, at least one of us is going to receive an incoming text or, God forbid, a robocall. And I don't think you want to be the one that everyone turns and stares at when that call or text comes in. Friends, we've come together today to show our love and our respect at this memorial for Brian McGinley. And these are the words of the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Friends, let's begin with a word of prayer. God, we can't deny the fact that in many ways this is a difficult day. But God, in spite of the difficult nature of this occasion, we are nevertheless thankful. God, we're thankful for your love. And God, we're thankful for the love of family and friends and neighbors and colleagues. We're thankful for all who have gathered this afternoon, all who are watching the live stream as we honor the life and celebrate the legacy of Brian McGinley. And God, we take comfort in the assurance that we have that at this very moment, Brian is with you. He's in a much better place. And God, just as you have been faithful to Brian, we know that you're faithful to all of us as well. And so, God, I pray that you would comfort those who are understandably grieving as a result of Brian's passing. And ultimately, God, today, in spite of the grief, we choose to thank you. God, we thank you for Brian's life, even though it ended too soon. We thank you for his legacy. We thank you for all of the ways in which he made this world a better place. And God, I thank you for the memories of Brian that his loved ones will carry with them in their minds and in their hearts for the rest of their lives. God, we lift up all these prayers to you. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, friends, the family wanted to have a time in the service this afternoon when we would give you the opportunity to be a part and to perhaps say a few words about Brian. Perhaps you could be taking the next few minutes to be thinking about what you might like to say about him. To get us started, I would like to invite Brian's son, Dennis, to come and share some words about his father.
Thank you. I've written this as a tribute to my father. For those who don't know me, my name is Dennis McGinley, son of Brian McGinley, brother of Daniel McGinley, son of Wendy McGinley. Thank you all for coming here today to celebrate the man we love so much, my dad. He was happy, a loving father, so kind and great. He and I have been through, yes, ups and downs, but we loved each other throughout time. All I wanted to do was spend the rest of my life with him in those days. I remember the time we came here to Nebraska long ago when I was in elementary school. We came up here a few times. We went to the zoo, went to the Memorial Stadium, played in the snow together. Even before that, we even had fun together. As from a baby to a child, we swam together, we drive together, go out in parks, go see movies. Even the holidays, we trick or treat together, open our presents on Christmas Day, go Easter egg hunting. Then we visit our families and friends together. He wanted to get into shipshape, and I tried to help him the best I could. Spend the rest of my life with him, with me, my mom, and brother. But his heart gave out on him. God freed him from the pain and suffering. First, my mom, Jane, died 10 years ago, 2015. That was the year I graduated. My life was getting better, but then it got worse after her passing. Then my dad remarried and married her. I was happy again, that our lives would be normal. But now he's gone too. Losing my dad is now one of the hardest things I've ever gone through. Losing both my parents, my original parents. Now I have her and my brother and my relatives still with me and friends. I was his earliest birthday present before the 15th. Yes, I was born on September 15th. And then he called me his early birthday gift, me. He was happy. He was smiling every time he sees me, and I smile too when I see him. She smiles. Friends and family smile when we see each other. I thought that he would last until 100, but I was wrong. Life is too short. Our lives are too short. I wish he didn't have to go and leave. Neither me, my mom, or brother, none of us would. I wish he would be here today so we can accomplish more great things. But God has a plan. Whatever plan is, God is plan, I will try to follow. The most important lesson my dad taught me was kindness and making friends. And that's what I'll do. I'll go out and see the world and try to make as many friends as I can. I will try to be strong, the best I can be. I know he won't be here with me at present, but I know he'll be with me in spirit and heart. Dad, I will miss you more than words can say, but I promise to carry out your wisdom with me and live in the way that honors your memory. This isn't really goodbye. This is only departure, for we will see each other again. I love you, Dad, more than you know. May you rest in peace. Thank you.
Dennis, that was a beautiful tribute to your father. Thank you so much. And friends, at this time, I'm going to share with you a tribute that Wendy wrote. If I can get back to the page. This is from Brian's wife, Wendy. The Lord has done great things for us, and we are filled with joy. Psalm 126, verse 3. Brian, it is inconceivable that you are no longer by my side. I just can't grasp it. You have always told me, when Jesus is all you have, you'll find Jesus is all you need. And I must trust God because he is faithful. Now is my time to depend on the Lord to survive this. One consolation is that you are no longer suffering. You and I met on October 8th, 2022. What followed was the rapid building of a stellar relationship based on equal parts love, respect, high-level intellectual compatibility, solid friendship, and deep and abiding joy in each other's company. It quickly became clear that even at our advanced ages, marriage would soon be in our future. You married me Christmas Eve. Thanks to Dennis and his skills, we have an outstanding video of the ceremony. It's difficult to put into words what being with you has meant to me. You remind me how to be consistently patient and compassionate. It was magical to witness the results. You led quietly by example. Every day you took time to read and study the Bible. You were kind enough to answer my incessant questions. I felt like a dry sponge soaking up precious information. The depth of your knowledge of the Bible was considerable and inspiring to a novice such as myself. You asked me to read Philippians and Ephesians to you in your final days. There was always a sense of deep comfort and familiarity between us, the kind that is achieved only through time and experience. But somehow it mysteriously belonged to us. I thoroughly treasured this miracle. There's a well-known saying that one person can't make a difference, but your life is a testament to the complete opposite. You stirred my mind and heart every day with your ever-present positive and gentle approach to life. You were the unofficial greeter outside the church, and everyone responded to your warmth and charisma. You helped people when you worked at People's City Mission in college. You helped so many special needs children in school. You helped so many people in the support group where we met, and you made innumerable friends. You lived a life of unwavering purpose, filled with humility and devoted to service to others. I'm delighted you returned to your, and now my, cherished Nebraska. We have made a beautiful home here for the three of us. It will hold and comfort me as I slowly attempt to regain my footing over time. For now, I must simply be still and absorb the seismic shock of losing the love of my life so suddenly. Every morning, our exuberant greeting to each other was, "We get to spend another day together." Although our earthly journey as soulmates may be over now, I have an abundance of sublime memories through which to sift for the rest of my life. I am beyond grateful. Godspeed, Brian, my love. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Proverbs 3:5. Wendy, thank you for this beautiful tribute to your husband. Well, friends, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we are going to open it up at this time, and you're welcome to take this opportunity to share a favorite memory. You can tell a favorite story, or you can just express some of the things that you appreciated the most about Brian. Because the service is being live streamed, we do need you to come up and speak from the podium so that those who are watching the live stream will be able to see and even more importantly, be able to hear you. Is there anyone else that has anything that they'd like to say, anything else they'd like to remember about Brian this afternoon?
Hello, my name's Dave, lifelong friend of Brian, at least since junior high school. But before I begin, I kind of take a moment to say hi to Brian, because I'm not sure of a lot of things, but I am pretty sure he's here in some form, watching over you guys. I got a chance to speak to Brian in depth, actually, the last week or so of his life. He was not sleeping real well, and I'd be up checking Facebook, and we get a chance to chat. And there were some key moments there that were, the night of his surgery, he was up, and he was pretty nervous, understandably, and I was trying to figure out things to say to buoy his spirits. We went over all the memories we had from school. Then a little later in the week, same thing again. I think he had just gotten the diagnosis maybe then, that the 6 to 8 weeks or months. And so he was still pretty reserved, still philosophical about it. The third time, he was actually joking around, which may seem funny, but joking's a coping mechanism. Brian was, well, it seemed to me that more than just accepting what was happening, he was oddly comforted by a lot of it, although he was concerned, again, about Wendy and his sons. But that was a great conversation. He was in very high spirits. That's probably the one I'll take with me, the one, the biggest memory I'll have. We had all sorts of plans coming up. I just recently developed an interest in the Civil War, and that was a mistake to bring that up to Brian. He had me running out and getting the Daniel Day-Lewis movie, and he had a whole list of books he made me promise to go out and grab. So we had all sorts of plans. He was going to tutor me on that. But I'm going to fulfill my end, so. What else is there? That's pretty much, most of the other memories I have are things that wouldn't really make sense here. You have to take them in the context. Mostly I remember Brian back from the high school. He was really big in the drama department. He was quite good. We were in a one-act play together, by the way. He played my father. So, he really, really was good. Let's see. You're gonna have to excuse me a bit. I'm still wrapping my mind around all this. Like I said, Brian was a very close friend of mine for many, many years. But I am glad he came back to Lincoln, and I just wish they lived a little bit closer. We did have some plans, but like they say, you make plans, God laughs. So, but I'm gonna miss him desperately. When you get to a certain age, you don't make too many new friends. And Brian was one of the better people I've ever known. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that has anything they'd like to say, anything else that they'd like to remember about Brian this afternoon? Yes, sir.
First of all, I'd like to know what Dave's last name is, because I went to school with Brian too. Really? First of all. Larry Meyer. Oh, really? Yeah. Well, I'm Larry Meyer. I was Brian's next door neighbor. Brian and I, we used to pitch our pup tents in the backyard and camp in the backyard when we were kids. The one thing I remember about Ryan is he liked to debate. And we had the most interesting debate, and we never did solve this debate. So now that we're here amongst friends with Brian, maybe you can help us solve this debate. His mom and dad drove a Plymouth Fury, and my mom and dad drove a Pontiac Catalina. Which car was the better car? We would debate for hours about why the Plymouth Fury was better than the Pontiac Catalina, and we never did get it solved. And in fact, Brian and I, we just laugh about that, joke about that. I too had a chance to talk to Brian a couple of weeks before he passed, and we brought that up in conversation there too, because we never did solve that one. How many of you vote for the Pontiac Catalina? I lose, because they had the Plymouth Fury, and so they win. But yeah, I'm going to miss Brian. Brian, like I said, we went through grade school together, kindergarten all the way through high school. The first semester at college, we were roommates first semester at college. And yeah, it's sad that he passed so early. So, sorry. Anyways, that's about it. So at least the debate is settled.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that has anything that they'd like to say, anything else that they'd like to remember about Brian this afternoon? Well, my understanding is that Neil Nelson was going to share a reading with us this afternoon, that Neil Nelson was going to read the Gettysburg Address. Of course, we all know how important the Civil War, and we know that that Brian loved Abraham Lincoln. So at this time, if I could invite Neil Nelson to come and read the Gettysburg Address to us.
I'm Neil Nelson, Brian's neighbor and friend, and to Wendy and Dennis and the rest of Brian's family and friends that I recently had the pleasure to meet, and Jody and I are so very sorry for your loss. I only knew Brian for about 3 years. As we know, he was a great admirer of Lincoln. And Brian had a trait in common, I think, with his hero. They were both known for their kindness. It was one thing that people always remembered that stood out about President Lincoln was his kindness. And that certainly stood out with Brian as well. Now, to fulfill Brian's wish, I will read the Gettysburg Address and the second inaugural. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place to those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, and that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. Fellow countrymen, at this second appearing to take the oath of the presidential office, there is less occasion for an extended address than there was at the first. Then a statement, somewhat in detail, of a course to be pursued, seemed fitting and proper. Now, at the expiration of 4 years, during which public declarations have been constantly called forth on every point and phase of the great contest which still absorbs the attention and engrosses the energies of the nation, little that is new could be presented. The progress of our arms, upon which all else chiefly depends, is as well known to the public as to myself, and it is, I trust, reasonably satisfactory and encouraging to all. With high hope for the future, no prediction in regard to it is ventured. On the occasion corresponding to this 4 years ago, all thoughts were anxiously directed to an impending civil war. All dreaded it, all sought to avert it. While the inaugural address was being delivered from this place, devoted altogether to saving the Union without war, insurgent agents were within the city seeking to destroy it without war, seeking to dissolve the Union and divide effects by negotiation. Both parties deprecated war, but one of them would make war rather than let the nation survive, and the other would accept war rather than let it perish, and the war came. 1/8 of the whole population were colored slaves, not distributed generally over the Union, but localized in the southern part of it. These slaves constituted a peculiar and powerful interest. All knew that this interest was, somehow, the cause of the war. To strengthen, perpetuate, and extend this interest was the object for which the insurgents would rend the Union, even by war, while the government claimed no right to do more than to restrict the territorial enlargement of it. Neither party expected for the war the magnitude or the duration which it has already attained. Neither anticipated that the cause of the conflict might cease with, or even before the conflict itself should cease. Each looked for an easier triumph and a result less fundamental and astounding. Both read the same Bible and pray to the same God, and each invokes his aid against the other. It may seem strange that any men should dare to ask a just God's assistance in wringing their bread from the sweat of other men's faces, but let us judge not that we not be judged. The prayers of both could not be answered. That of neither has been answered fully. The Almighty has his own purposes. Woe unto the world because of offenses, for it must needs be that offenses come. But woe to that man by whom the offenses cometh. If we should suppose that American slavery is one of those offenses which, in the providence of God, must needs come, but which, having continued through his appointed time, he now wills to remove, and that he gives to both North and South this terrible war, as the woe due to those by whom the offense came, shall we discern therein any departure from those divine attributes which the believers in a living God always ascribe to him? Fondly we do hope, fervently we do pray, that this mighty scourge of war may speedily pass away. Yet, if God wills that it continue until all the wealth piled by the bondsman's 250 years of unrequired toil shall be sunk, and until every drop of blood drawn by the lash shall be paid by another drawn with the sword, as was said 3,000 years ago, so still it must be said, the judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations.
Thank you so much. Well, friends, I know that you've heard the old saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Right now, we're going to view this slideshow that's been prepared to help us as we continue to reflect on Brian's life and legacy. so much to the family for sharing all of those wonderful photos, all of those wonderful memories with us. Well, friends, as we've said, we have come together this afternoon to show our love and our respect at this memorial for Brian McGinley. And friends, I know that this is a tough day. But I don't think that Brian would want us to turn this into a sad or a somber or a solemn occasion. And so my hope is that in spite of the grief that I realize is present and is absolutely warranted, my hope is that we can make this what I think Brian would want it to be. My hope is that we can make this a celebration of a good man who lived a good life, even though it ended too soon, a man who's left a great legacy, a man who made this world a better place. And friends, of course, the greatest reason that we have to celebrate today is because we know that at this very moment, Brian is in heaven above. You know, at the very end of the Bible, in Revelation chapter 21, we're given a small glimpse into eternity. Revelation 21 tells us that heaven will be a place where we will live with the God who created us from the dust of the earth. And we're promised that in heaven, God's going to wipe away any and every tear from our eyes. We're promised that in heaven there will be no more death, no more sorrow, no more crying, no more pain. We're promised that in heaven, God will have made all things new. And so I hope that you can find comfort in the reminder that Brian truly is in a much better place. But at the same time, as I say that, friends, I want you to know that I understand what you're feeling today because I've sat where you're sitting. I know what it's like to lose a father. I know what it's like to lose a family member, a friend, a neighbor, a colleague. Friends, I know that Brian was a great man, and I know that he will be greatly missed. And so what I also want to remind you today is that the same God who's welcomed Brian into eternity, that same God is always available to all of us, to offer us comfort and to offer us strength in the difficult days that I know will lie ahead. Psalm 147 tells us that God heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds, healing their pain and comforting their sorrow. And friends, I believe that God is a never-ending source of comfort, encouragement. And just as Brian McGinley was created in God's image, friends, all of us were created in God's image. I don't think that God ever wants to see any of us suffer needlessly. But rather, I believe that it's in the difficult moments like these when God is more than willing to come right up alongside of us. I believe that God's always willing to reach out and take us by the hand and walk beside us for as long as we need through the difficult days that I know will lie ahead. And friends, some final thoughts that we should probably consider this afternoon are these. What can we learn from the examples that Brian set for us, and how should we continue with our lives after we leave here today? I had a really nice visit with Wendy and Dennis, and as they were telling me about Brian, I was taking notes as fast as I could. I asked them what they would always remember the most about Brian, and they talked about the fact that he was one of those people who was truly larger than life. They said that he was someone who just brightened up every room that he walked into. They said that whatever he did, he gave it 100%. They talked about the fact that he was quite this historian, and his love of the Civil War, of course. Talked about the encyclopedic knowledge that he had about the Civil War. They said that he had an entire room in his home dedicated to the Civil War, and that he led a Civil War club at the school where he taught. They talked about how much he loved Abraham Lincoln. They talked about his outgoing personality, and they talked about the fact that he was a Husker super fan. They talked about how when one football season ended, he would literally start counting the days until the beginning of the next football season. They talked about the fact that he had spent a fair part of his life in Texas, but that he always remained a Nebraskan at heart. They talked about how he loved all the Husker teams, and they talked about all the Husker memorabilia that he had accumulated over the years. They talked about the simple things that he enjoyed in life. Old movies, classic TV shows, talked about how he would watch It's a Wonderful Life every Christmas Eve, and they talked about how he loved I Love Lucy, talked about the fact that he was a big fan of Jackie Gleason as well. Another question that I asked Wendy and Dennis is what they appreciated the most about Brian, what they thought the rest of you would say that you admired the most about him. And they talked about the fact that he was always positive, that he was always upbeat. They talked about what an incredibly kind person he was. They also talked about how generous he was. They said that he was the type of person that would give you the shirt off his back. They talked about the fact that he had been a teacher his entire life, and it wasn't just what he did for a living. It's who he was, that he was a teacher at heart. It was his calling in life. They talked about what a wonderful father that he had been to Daniel and to Dennis. They talked about how passionate he was about civil rights, that he had been a civil rights advocate. But the thing that they said that they appreciated the very most about Brian, more than anything else, was the fact that he was a dedicated follower of Jesus Christ and that his faith never wavered to the very end. And friends, in the future, when you remember Brian McGinley, I hope these are the things that you remember about him. I hope you remember all of the great qualities that he had. And you know, friends, what I always tell people in occasions like these is that when we take the time to reflect on a person's legacy, I think it's important for us to take a few moments to take stock of our own lives. Because, friends, I think all of us here know that someday our loved ones will gather. They'll talk about what we did with the lives that we have been given. Just like this afternoon, we've been talking about what Brian did with the life that he was given. And so if you appreciated these qualities that he had, if you appreciated the fact that he was always positive and upbeat, if you appreciated the way that he would be there for you when you needed him, that he would give you the shirt off his back, that he stood up for the rights of others, and if you realize maybe you've got some room for personal growth in one or more of those areas, then friends, I would encourage you today to make a personal resolution that you're going to try to follow some of the good examples that he set for us. Because friends, if you'll do that, then that's one of the ways in which you'll carry on Brian McGinley's legacy. But friends, the most important thing that we've said about Brian is that he was a man of tremendous faith. And friends, because of that, we know where he is at this very moment. And we know where he's going to be for all of eternity. Friends, it's my hope and my prayer that every single one of us will be reunited with Brian one day in a much better place. And friends, that opportunity will come to all of us, just as it came to him, just very simply, through faith. Friends, someday all of us will have the opportunity to be reunited with Brian. And we will have that opportunity as a result of God's love, as a result of God's forgiveness, as a result of God's amazing grace. And right now, as we prepare to conclude our time together this afternoon, we're going to listen to the hymn the family selected for the service today. At this time, Michaela is going to come for us, and she is going to sing Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I am found, was blind, but now I see.
Kayla, that was absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. Well, friends, at this time, we will conclude with the Lord's Prayer, and you are invited to join in its recitation. Let us pray now together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Well, friends, I have no doubt that at this very moment, Brian is in heaven above. When I asked Wendy and Dennis what they thought he'd be doing up there right now, they said that they took comfort in the thought that he is reunited with all of his loved ones who preceded him. They said that they thought he'd probably tracked down Abraham Lincoln and was visiting with Abraham Lincoln up there as well. I would certainly like to think that he's looking down on this gathering and that he is honored by your decision to be here today to show your love and support to his family. Once again, on behalf of the family, I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to invite you to stay for the reception, which will be held here in the garden room at this time. The family is going to head out to the cemetery very quickly for a private committal service, but then they will come back very shortly and join you in the garden room for the reception. And friends, this concludes our memorial.